Welcome to my comprehensive guide for how Omega mods work in Ratchet Gladiator or Deadlocked. The game really uses both of the names, it doesn't really matter. It just depends on the region you're in, it's going to be called a different thing because of localization and stuff like that. So anyway, let's actually just get right to the point and start explaining about what the different mods do. So, to give you a really brief summary, if you need a refresher on the game, Omega mods are pretty much games that apply effects that can drastically change different. Well, they don't drastically change, but they benefit your weapons a lot in a whole different bunch of different ways. And we're going to start off with the very first one here, the Acid mod, listed on one of the Ratchet and Clank wikis as not being that powerful when you get to later parts of the game. I actually heavily disagree with that. It is one of the first mods you get in the game for a measly only 500 bolts, and it'll be more than worth that later on for a number of reasons, and I'm pretty much going to explain why. So the unique thing about the Acid mod is that, well, pretty much I should explain what it actually does. When applied to an enemy, it will start dealing damage over time and pretty much melt them. It's like a damage of time effect in any a damage over time effect in many MMOs and that kind of stuff. The unique thing about the Acid mod is how it's applied. The Acid mod will be applied in bigger amounts if you have a weapon that does a lot of damage, such as the Scorpion Flail here. However, the Acid mod will also be applied over and over individually if you have a weapon that fires a lot of shots at once, such as the Dual Raptors, which are just a different name for the Dual Vipers upgraded at level 10. Also, the same is in effect for the mini turret launcher, which fires turrets that, well, once they're deployed, they will start rapidly targeting enemies, and these fire really fast as well. Each individual shot from the turret will start affecting different enemies. It will start affecting an enemy each time it hits them. Another unique thing about the Acid mod is that it is very, very effective against the bosses in the game, such as the Exterminators. A really great one that comes to mind is the Eviscerator. In fact, right now, I'm just going to go over to the Dread Zone shuttle and show you exactly what I mean in action. So we're just going to fly to the arena because I'm at the stage of the game where you have access to go to the control level and defeat the big bad once and for all. But we are going to just ignore that right for now and go into the arena and start a different match with, in fact, yes, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're first going to do the advanced qualifier, so I can show off a different mod and how that works, and then how it works against some of the tough enemies such as the Eviscerator in the game. So, the Ratchet and Clank wiki lists that the Ice mod is pretty much one of the best things you can have on a number of weapons, and I mean, they aren't wrong, because how the Ice mod works is that as you shoot an enemy with it, each individual shot will then will pretty much coat them in ice and make them move slower, as you can kind of see here. It takes one shot pretty much, because my guns are so upgraded, to pretty much freeze the enemy in place immediately, and then once they're frozen in place, they can't move, and it's a great crowd control ability. And let me just decrease the volume because, oh my god, that was loud. Hopefully I can reduce it a little in editing as well. But yeah, I'm just going to reduce it a little here. But in my opinion, the wiki straight up praises the mod way too much, because against the enemies like the Eviscerator, the Ice mod does not do a thing. And I'll show you right now. Here he is coming at me. I'm shooting the Ice mod at him, or bullets with Ice mod. They're doing nothing. In fact, against Exterminators, a whole heap of mods won't do anything. If we go over here and go down to the Omega mods, the Brainwashing mod won't do a thing because bosses aren't affected. It turns the enemies against each other, by the way. The Shock mod is laughably weak because it only does a tiny bit of damage to enemies and is great for removing the really weak enemies in the game, such as Swarmers and Blade Balls, but it won't do jack shit against an Exterminator. And the Morph mode won't do anything either, because if you could easily turn the Eviscerator or Ace Hardlight or any of the Exterminators into a sheep or a duck or a goose or whatever, or a pig, they'd be a laughing stock. So what actually tends to happen, the Acid mod straight up the best mod for versing exterminators, because now you can see my pellets are doing way more damage to the Eviscerator, because each individual dew viper bullet I hit him with, he is then affected by the acid, and then it starts to melt into him a lot. Yeah, so that is generally the acid mod explained. The acid mod also won't affect robotic enemies at all. So, for example, if you were using the silencer here, if you had the acid mod on it and you shot a dropship with it, it wouldn't affect that at all. And yeah, I think that is actually pretty much the ice mod and the acid mod explained very well there, because they pretty much show off what they do. Acid mod does damage over time, and then ice one pretty much freezes all enemies in the general vicinity, well, not general vicinity, but anything hit by the ice mod will then freeze them. So the next mod we're going to cover is the Napalm mod. The Napalm mod is a mod you get very early into the game, and at first, only the B2 Obliterator, which is now named the B11 Vaporizer because it's level 10, will be able to use it, because this mod has to be used on an explosive weapon, period. That's the only way you can actually use it. And when used on an explosive weapon and you fire it, it leaves behind these globs of napalm that will stick to bigger enemies, and for smaller enemies, it generally just, if they walk in it, they die and melt, which is generally kind of awesome. The Napalm mod can also be used on the Hunter Mine Launcher, making it really spammable, because the Hunter Mines by default are really spammable. You can just keep on using them over and over and create a whole heap of napalm on the field. However, there's a limit to how much napalm you can actually use. In fact, here's a bigger enemy such as Leviathan. I'm going to use the mod on it right now to show you what I mean by it affecting it. So that shot there didn't really actually affect it, but now you can see the napalm actually sticking to its leg and then melting it there. That's generally how you want the mod to act. Yeah, but one of the downsides to it, and I'm hoping to find one of these enemies actually in this arena, is the mod doesn't actually affect dropships very well. If you were to happen to use it on a dropship, and you were shooting it with the rocket launcher, the napalm sometimes just falls down from the dropship and doesn't actually connect with the floor properly, making it a bit of a dud. In fact, I'm just going to change challenges here and try and find one with a lot of dropships in it so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so here we are on the Valix belt with the rocket launcher equipped, because I know this area is utterly filled with dropships. We're just going to have to find one to show you what I mean. Oh good, here's finally a dropship. So, as you can see, I shot it immediately, and I forgot to mention that occasionally the napalm will actually work. So there, all three rockets ended up hitting the dropship, and the napalm did hit the floor. But it depends on how high the dropship is off the ground, because there have been occasions where I've tried using the napalm mod, and it just did not work. It just fell from the dropship, hit the floor, and actually just fell right through the floor, and didn't kill any of the enemies. So yeah, that's a thing to keep in mind with the napalm mod. But in general, my opinion is that the napalm mod is an awesome mod, because the limit of the amount of napalm that's around is quite large. So you should be able to deploy plenty of mines and stuff like that, and have plenty of napalm on the floor. And yeah, it'll take a long time before you actually, well, a decent while before you actually hit the limit. Also, as you can see here, against flying enemies, the napalm mod might also not be the best thing. Yeah, and that is generally how the napalm mod works. It doesn't affect you, it's hot, it's gooey, it hurts enemies a lot, and I generally don't really have much more to say about it, so we can move on to the next mod. Oh yeah, and the fact that it can only be used on explosive weapons. So the next mod we're going to cover, as I already mentioned before, is the shock mod. So the shock mod doesn't really do too much against some of the stronger enemies later in the game, such as these guys here. I'm mainly just killing them right now because my weapon is so damn powerful. But the way the shock mod really shines is against smaller enemies. In fact, let me just put another cut in here, and I'll get to a certain challenge, because that challenge really shows how the shock mod shines way more than all of this right now. So here we are in the challenge I was talking about. It's called Swarming the Gauntlet, by the way. And as you can see there, a single pellet from my Dual Raptors is able to basically kill every single one of these small enemies in the arena as soon as it hits one. Against small enemies, this mod rocks because it can just kill them all in one hit like so. And the best thing about the game is that you can pretty much mod your weapons on the fly. So if you wanted to, you can go into a mission like this, pretty much equip every single weapon you have with the shock mod, and then no matter what weapon you pick up, you're insta-killing these little little blade ball twerps, and basically leveling up a weapon. In fact, I think this might be an excellent way of leveling up a weapon. Another unique thing about the shock mod is you could potentially use it in a weapon like the Dual Vipers, and then be shooting larger enemies, and you could use it as a way to kind of not worry about the small, like, swarmer enemies, because as you're shooting the larger one, let's say you're on Cerathos and shooting Leviathan, you could just keep on pelting it with Dual Viper bullets until it dies, and then just straight up, well, ignore the smaller enemies because they're constantly dying because of the shock mod. Right, so now we can move on to covering one of the next mods, and that is going to be the Brainwash mod. Now, unfortunately, there may be some uses for this, and there may be even like some hidden way of using this, but I, for the life of me, have not figured out a good way to use the Brainwash mod. It may be considered like, I don't know, kind of a bit of like a bad mod, but I think it might have uses. Like I said before, I find it really, really hard to use. So the reason why I find it hard to use is because of how the mod works. You have to find an enemy that is strong enough to be hit by the mod, but not strong enough to die immediately from your weapons. So these enemies here, they might actually be a terrible example, because I have to use the weapon really liberally, like the Dual Vipers here, or Dual Raptors, whatever you call it. I have to like really slowly fire them, and as you can see there, these were kind of like low-level enemies, so they were dying really quickly into my weapons. When what you want to happen with your weapon is you want the enemy to be hit a little bit but not die, so the mod actually takes effect. Because what the mod does is it convinces enemies to start fighting each other, just giving you more breathing room. The bad thing about the mod, though, is that it just straight up will not affect swarmer enemies because they die in a single hit of anything. An explosion, a single Dual Viper pellet, even when it's not upgraded, anything. Also, the mod completely doesn't affect robotic enemies. So you see this dropship here? I'm gonna right now equip my silencer, like my rocket launcher, with the brainwashing mod, and then shoot the dropship. Yep, as you can see, nothing happened because I was killing the dropship instantly because of how powerful my rockets were. But even if they weren't that powerful, your rockets would just, like as you can see there, all those enemies were affected, but they straight up died. And yes, I know I'm showing swarmers again, but again, let me show it off against this like turret here. Again, it instantly died. And I mean, I guess you could use it on like a stalker turret there, but again, the brainwashing mod wouldn't provide that much use because you usually have to go and you have to EMP a stalker turret, meaning you'd have to brainwash it, hope your bots don't kill it in the meantime, and then wait for it to turn back online for it to finally start shooting its friends. So yeah, you generally have to put a lot of effort into the brainwashing mod, and especially for more powerful weapons, such as the sniper rifle, especially when you upgrade it, and the rocket launcher in this game, the brainwashing mod straight up will not work that well against enemies because all of those weapons I listed are generally insta-killing most enemies in the game. It also, like I said before, doesn't affect robotic enemies, so dropships straight up a no-no. And maybe like one other two enemies that like are also counted as robotic. But yeah, that is pretty much how the brainwashing mod works. There are some achievements related to it, and for getting those achievements, especially for the bigger enemies you have to kill, such as executioners, I recommend equipping it to a smaller weapon like the Dual Vipers and pelting them with a number of Dual Viper bullets, hoping your bots don't kill the enemy. If it really bots are way too annoying, go play co-op and just have the other player sit there and do nothing while you pelt them with the bullets, and then to get enough enemies brainwashed, just focus on the tougher enemies and hope they don't kill the enemies around them too quickly. But yeah, as you can see, I am really not a fan of the brainwashing mod. So the next mod we're going to cover is the Morph mod. In my opinion, this is actually, I used to not like it in the past that much, but now I have actually changed my mind on it, and I think it's really good. And the reason why is because it kind of works a little bit like the brainwashing mod, where it will only take effect once you do a certain amount of damage to the enemy. But it works a little differently compared to the brainwashing mod because you have to pretty much do enough damage to kill an enemy for this mod to take effect, which may make it seem kind of useless at first, but it can actually be really useful for a few reasons. First, of course, is when you kill an enemy with this thing, it immediately turns them into a farm animal, an explosive farm animal, which will try to wander as close as it can towards an enemy on the field, and then blow up when it hits them. So it kind of functions as a living bomb walking around, and then on top of that, occasionally you have matches where the game will only count the match as complete when you kill all the enemies, and if there's a bunch of farm animal enemies wandering around, it can give you a bit of breathing room and some time to like think out your strategy. Also, the farm animals sometimes have different traits, such as these ducks here are actually pooping, and their poop is explosive, so when it hits, as you can see, they exploded. When it hits an enemy, it will generally do damage to them. Also, if you get tired of the animals being around, they can also be detonated by just hitting them enough. Unfortunately, that does do damage to your bots, and you may kill your bots with this mod. But I mean, hey, if your bots get killed, you can just revive them, and then it also powers up their special meter. So it can also be a way of, like, potentially recharging your bots in their special. Also, another unique thing about the Morph mod is that if you hit a flying enemy with it, it becomes whatever animal it used to become with wings when kind of flaps around, which honestly is kind of adorable in my opinion. But that's pretty much the Morph mod covered, so now we're going to cover the next one, and that is the Mini Bomb mod. Unique thing about the Mini Bomb mod is that it can only be equipped to an explosive weapon, so it can only be used on the Hunter Mine Launcher, the Vaporizer, or the Silencer in this case. I think that's what was the original name for the weapon as well. I don't think it really changed names. So I'm going to go right back to the Eviscerator fight, so let me just put a quick cut in here while I get there, because that's where I want to show off just how useful this mod can be. So here we are fighting the Eviscerator again, and the main reason why I chose to fight him is because I wanted to show you, that the Mini Bomb mod is actually one of the mods that works very well against the Exterminators. And I'm going to show you why pretty much right now. So I'm just equipping the Hunter Mine Launcher and the Silencer with the Mini Bomb mod, and then keeping the Vaporizer with the Napalm mod. So, the Eviscerator is like one of the most jumpiest, flightiest enemies in the game, and if I were to try and use the Napalm mod against him, you can see that time it was a correct hit. Like, I hit him, and the Napalm's now stuck to him, but if he's flying, for instance, some of the Napalm may just like fly up in the air and not really hit him. This is not really doing the best against him. However, if I were to switch to another weapon, such as the Hunter Mine Launcher or the Silencer, then it works great against him. All the little bombs that fly out of the original rocket in this case will just hit him immediately and try and bounce towards him and kill him. Also, you can potentially shoot this thing at the floor so that every single mini bomb will immediately just target him. But here, he's even killed one of the enemies, so it can be a potentially great thing to use if you don't want to constantly switch mods. Like you might, like normally before I said, you might want to use the Acid mod against the Eviscerator. With the Mini Bomb mod, there's no real need, because the Mini Bombs function as well against the enemies as they do against the actual, like, boss here, the Eviscerator. In fact, I'm kind of ripping him apart here. There, I got use out of my weapon, even though I totally whiffed the shot, and didn't actually shoot him properly. I wasn't even aiming at him properly, and yet my Mini Bombs was still affecting him. Also, if you've noticed, the Mini Bombs don't really have a limit like the Napalm does. So I'm going to equip the Hunter Mine Launcher here and just spam mines for ages. Just spam mines all over the place. And you can see Mini Bombs are just flying out of each individual mine. So normally this weapon's kind of not that great for killing the Eviscerator, but I've got it quite upgraded here, and the Mini Bombs are really just doing a number on him. Also, another great thing about the Mini Bomb Launcher is that if you have a weapon that has multiple shots, which I guess only really covers the rocket launcher when you got it at max level, but I mean, hey, that's what I've done here, it's at max level, so I might as well cover it. Each individual rocket you fire off will unleash Mini Bombs. Like you can see it actually at work there. So yeah, just all in all, a general excellent weapon for killing bosses. And that is pretty much in general how the Mini Bombs work. That's all I need to cover for them. So, the next mod I'm going to cover is a very, very late game mod. I think it's one of the last mods in this list I'm actually going to cover, and it is the Time Bomb mod. The Time Bomb mod functions kind of a bit weird. First off, it can only be used on an explosive weapon, so that's these three only. No other weapon can even use it, so you're fresh out of luck if you try and use it on anything else. Next is generally how it works. So how the mod works is when you shoot it, if you don't hit an enemy, it does nothing. Like there, the time bomb mod was equipped and I shot the floor and whiffed the rocket on purpose, it does nothing. But if you hit an enemy, it'll then apply a little sticky grenade to them. The sticky grenade will then charge up, explode, and do a lot of damage. But the damage I don't think is scaled to your weapon. Like normally this rocket launcher I have here does a lot more damage to enemies. But if I were, for example, to just use the time bomb mod on the Hunter Mine Launcher, that's not the Hunter Mine Launcher, here's the Hunter Mine Launcher, there and launch it, I think it would just do as much damage as it does. Okay, apparently actually the damage is scaled to the weapon, because there, the Hunter Mine actually just done way less damage, and I think the Hunter Mine Launcher can actually glitch out sometimes with the time bomb mod, where it straight up just doesn't actually work and really apply the time bomb that well, especially to bosses. It tends to affect enemies better, but in my opinion, the best weapon for this is definitely the rocket launcher, because it gives you precision aiming with a time bomb. With the vaporizer here, it's pretty, in my opinion, or the obliterator, it's one of the worst weapons to use with a time bomb, because if you fire it normally and it just blows up, it does nothing. You actually have to land the bullet on an enemy, which there, yes, I landed it correctly on the eviscerator, but like, you just try landing it on him, like, right then when he was doing all the flipping. And there, I shot the weapon correctly, but it didn't connect with his foot because he wasn't actually on the floor, which really, really sucks. Oh, look at that, I actually ended up killing him. Well, actually just talking about all the stuff in the, I guess, this little guide here. Yeah, so there you have it. Time Bomb mod would do does a set amount of damage against certain enemies, and that would actually cover it for all the mods. But there is one last thing that I want to cover, and that is two pretty much recommendations I have for modding two weapons in the game. So most weapons in this game work pretty well if you put pretty much any type of mod on them, but there are two, in my opinion, which work very well with one certain mod, and that is the Holo Shield Launcher, or in this case the Omni Shield Launcher, because I got to upgrade it to level 10, and the Harbinger, which I guess kind of could be considered a bit of a spoiler weapon, but this is pretty much the equivalent of the Rhino from the other games. So, with the Omni Shield Launcher, you don't have the option for a lot of the mods here because it's not an explosive weapon, but this weapon also doesn't really affect enemies that well because you have to get the enemy to actually run into it. So if you notice before, those Tremor enemies, like the little minions the Eviscerator was spawning, were kind of running at me. Those would be excellent enemies to use this against because they would try and run at me and then jump into the shield a little bit like an idiot running into a brick wall. But not every enemy is going to do that, because even though a lot of enemies in this game are programmed to be kind of dumb, because, I mean, it's a PS2 game, what did you expect from the AI? In general, a lot of enemies are going to be using bullets, and when one of their bullets hits this, like let's say you deploy this against a Stalker turret, he's just shooting like a rapid-fire machine gun, it's not really going to morph the bullets, or brainwash the bullets, or do acid damage to the bullets, or even freeze the bullets. So that's why I really recommend putting the shock mod on this weapon, because it can be potentially a way to level this up very quickly. Because, let me give you an example. One of the Tremors, like one of the guys, which is the minion the Eviscerator spawns, is running at you. You deploy this weapon, he runs at you, there's a number of swarmers in the area, he runs into the shield like an idiot hitting a brick wall like I just mentioned, and then the electric effect immediately hits all the swarmers, thereby killing them and granting XP to this weapon, thereby upgrading it quicker and, leveling it up, because all the swarmers are now counted as kills for this weapon, even though it normally shouldn't kill them unless they run into it. The shock mod has killed all the swarmers. Now, the main reason why you'd actually want to use this weapon in the first place, if you're playing with Quick Select Pause on, then the game will pause whenever you open up the Quick Select menu, and this shield launcher isn't even that useful because anytime you're in danger, you can just go and then hold down the triangle button, and then look at what weapons you want to pick and give yourself some breathing time, or even just open the pause menu. But I like to give myself a challenge in this game, so the shield launcher has actually become really useful to me because I deploy the shield and basically sit behind it for a few seconds and think, what am I going to do next? How am I going to survive this awful situation? Next up, the other thing I was going to cover is how different mods affect the Harbinger. So I might as well actually show you this weapon at first, how it actually works. So I'm going to put a quick cut in once I get to one of the planets, which I know it works very well on. So here we are after the small cut on one of the somewhat more late game planets, Planet Torval, and I'm going to equip the Harbinger here and show you pretty much what it can do. So how this weapon works is it pretty much has access to a satellite launch system, and you use it, and basically death will rain from above. It's super duper damaging, and it pretty much melts anything in the area. So it's like this turret here, no problem. Bullets come down. It is deader than a dodo. Multiple enemies such as these zombies here, anything in the area, you launch it, it comes down. They instantly will like turn to ash. I guess that one wasn't affected because he was underground or some crap. But yeah, generally this weapon is like pretty much the best endgame weapon you can get, I think, just because of the pure damage output it can do. Now to cover what actual mods work well on it. So what I've noticed for this weapon is that the freeze mod is generally not that useful, because the weapon has got so much damage output when you fire it that everything in the vicinity is pretty much annihilated. It doesn't really matter if you do a few more damage to a few more, if you freeze a few enemies, because they're going to be just straight up dead. Same effect kind of applies for the shock mod. I mean, so what if you kill a few more swarmers? The swarmers are most likely going to be in its gigantic blast radius anyway, and then they're going to be vaporized. The brainwashing mod is a definite no-no, because this thing does so much damage, anything that would be brainwashed potentially is just a pile of ash. The morph mod actually seems like kind of a good idea, because if it does so much damage, it would instantly turn them into a farm animal, which could then explode afterwards. But what I've picked up for it so far is the acid mod, because yes, I know it's the first mod you get in the game, but the thing is, it's scaled up on damage based on how much damage you're actually outputting with the weapon. So my general idea in this is shoot the weapon, and anything that happens to live from its super devastating orbital satellite strike will then have acid applied to it. But I think I'm actually going to switch the morph mod, because I think I just convinced myself with my own logic there that this might be the best mod for the weapon, because heaps of damage, and then afterwards the things are turned into farm animals. However, I think I mentioned this before, but against enemies such as the exterminators like Reactor, Shell Shock, and the Eviscerator, the morph mod won't do a thing, because turning them into a farm animal would be laughable and would kind of ruin the big impact of you actually killing them in the game, and would kind of ruin some of the story beats. So for exterminators, just like most other weapons, well, except for the explosive ones, because they can have mods that are even better at dealing with the exterminators, I recommend acid mod. Switch it to this when you're using the Harbinger against them. Same thing with the final boss in the game. If you go up against Gleeman Vox and use the Harbinger, which in my opinion is an excellent idea to use because he's a massive bullet sponge, equip acid mod, because you can't turn him into a sheep. You also can't freeze him. And I think you can't brainwash him, so the only two mods you'd actually want to have equipped for him is the acid mod or the shock mod, because this weapon, oddly enough, even though it's super devastating, is not an explosive weapon, so it can't equip the mini bomb mod, the time bomb mod, or the napalm mod. So, I hope you found this extensive guide to Omega mods in Ratchet Gladiator / Deadlocked useful. Subscribe to my channel and come back later if you... I'm pretty sure I'm going to be making more Ratchet and Clank content eventually at some point. So subscribe and stick around if you'd like to. If not, fair enough. I mean, it's your choice. And bye for now.